week 3 of talking about greater than, of putting people ahead of ourselves in our life, and this is really the key to everything, because here's the deal. We are all built with a factory setting. We come out of the womb like this. We have a better than attitude. That's our factory setting. The Bible calls that our sinful nature. I call it the factory setting. We all have a better than attitude in life, and it really goes like this. My car is better than your car, and my house is better than your house, and my kids are better than your kids, and my kids are better dressed than your kids, and my body is better than your body. That's one I really struggle with. And the food that I eat is better than the food you eat, and my landscaping is better than your landscaping, and my attitude is better than your attitude, and my personality is better than your personality, and on it goes, and we have this better than. And we may not feel like we're better than everybody in every area, or that's what we're striving for, but we want to be better than somebody at something, and that's where we draw the source of our confidence and our hope, and that's where we place our faith a lot of times. And we think that if we can just get there, if we can just get to that place where we can say, man, my life is better than your life, or my life at least is better than my parents' life, or whatever we're trying to get to, that's going to be the source of some kind of peace, that's going to be some sort of happiness that we attain in life when we are finally better than. And Jesus came to this earth, and all throughout the Gospels, he said that here's the secret. It's not that. Actually, the secret to that peace and that hope and that happiness that you're looking for is just the exact opposite. And Jesus introduced this radical new principle that we shouldn't try to be better than anybody, but that we should consider others greater than ourselves. And Jesus said this in a bunch of different ways. One way that he said it was one night the disciples, the guys that actually wrote the New Testament, were arguing amongst themselves. And what would you think that the disciples, the guys, Matthew and Peter and John, the guys that actually wrote down the New Testament, what do you think that these guys were arguing about? They were arguing about which one of them was the greatest. I don't even know what that conversation looked like, but they were kind of in front of the Son of God. They were arguing about which of them was actually better than the other. And Jesus turned to his disciples, and again, paradigm shift, he said this, Mark chapter 9. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all. The servant of all. See, we don't have a hard time serving some people that we feel like have earned it, people that we feel like we're obligated to, maybe people that have done something for us. We can serve those kinds of people, but Jesus says, no, I'm not talking about that. Even people that are far from the heart of God do that. Here's the key, that you would serve all. And so something that's very important to the heart of our church and individually is that we just keep hitting that over and over again. The shift that we want to make in our life is we start considering people in our world, our community, greater than ourselves. I want to tell you, this is the key to every relationship you have in your life. If you want to have, those of you who are married, if you want to have a healthy marriage, here's what you do. You consider your spouse greater than yourself. If you want to be a good parent, there's a lot of different techniques and there's a lot of different wisdom out there, but at the heart of it all, it is you genuinely consider your kids greater than yourself, and you put their life before your life. You consider other people. This is the key to every work relationship that you've ever had. This is the key to every friendship that you've ever had. If you genuinely, in every aspect of your life, say, no, you are greater than me, it will change everything. And when you think about it, the people that you respect the most, the people that have the biggest influence in your life, the people that you automatically say, I'm going to listen to that person, that it isn't always the wise people, it isn't always the influential people, it's just the people in your life who have considered you, at least at some point, greater than themselves, that you get the feeling that they care more about you than they even care about themselves. And so Jesus calls us to do that. And it is radically different than what everybody else on planet Earth is doing. It's so radically different that not very many even Christians or churchgoers or followers of Christ ever really get to. And Christ keeps bringing us back to opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to consider others greater than ourselves, because he wants us to make this shift. Now, it happens in every conversation and every opportunity that you have, and specifically for us, it's happening with a really big opportunity right now with us as a church. We have a big opportunity to consider the people in our community greater than ourselves. Really, this is an opportunity that we have, but it's really more an opportunity for our community. And so right now, this is a little bit review. If you've been coming the last couple of weeks, you'll be like, yeah, I already heard this, but I want to make sure you hear it again. And maybe if you're new or you haven't been here, I want to just challenge you. This is our moment. This is our big thing that we together individually are coming together as one big body, and we are accomplishing. We are looking at buying the Taylor Lanes. Again, we're looking hopefully to close on the Taylor Lanes in June. It's been kind of fun already. We've had some obstacles that maybe you guys didn't even know about that God has just torn down already. One of the obstacles is we were really kind of nervous about our relationship with the city. We thought, well, you know, it's not going to be a business anymore. It's going to be a nonprofit, so the city isn't going to have tax revenue. So we were very kind of nervous whether the city was going to let this happen or not. So we've been trying to get a meeting with the mayor and just try to get some sense of whether this was going to be able to sink or swim. So yesterday, we were actually doing something. Our local outreach team was putting together an event for the opening of the water park at Heritage Park. And so we showed up, and we gave out free hot dogs, and we had bouncy houses and stuff, and it was a cool opportunity. But the mayor was there, so I got a chance to meet him, Mayor Taylor. Went over and talked to him, and he was like, hey, you know, I know you guys have been nervous about the tax base and whether the city's going to be favorable or anything, but he's like, listen, the worst thing that could happen is that we could have a dilapidated building that isn't having any use. He says, so the fact that you guys want to come in and rejuvenate this, to renovate this, and make this something great, like we're all for that. So yeah, we're supportive of what you guys are doing. And I was like, really? That simple? That awesome? I can go home now, right? Like that's absolutely fantastic. And so there have been obstacles that have been kind of getting our way, but as we discern like what God's doing and where we're going, God is tearing down those obstacles. So that's exciting. Now, our moment right now is in all of our life is to consider people greater than ourselves. But specifically, what that comes down to in this moment, in this couple of weeks right now, it comes down to our giving. Can we consider the people in our community greater than ourselves? So again, in way of review, we are looking for some specific funds by some specific dates, and those dates are coming up on, I can't believe it is almost June already, but we're already here. So we are looking for funds needed by June 19th in order to close on the building by the end of June. We're looking for $275,000. And on top of that, we're looking for funds by September 30th, additionally to improve the building and do more to it and the transition between this building and that building. We're looking for an additional $200,000. So we are looking for a grand total, big, optimistic, God-sized thing here. We're looking for $475,000 from every person that comes to church here to come together and be able to pull this off. So we have handed these out, these commitment cards. Maybe you already have one. If not, you can grab one out as you're leaving the building today. We also have these online. The specific commitment, the moment that each of us are a part of, is to be able to contribute by June 19th an X dollar amount, and then by September 30th. So we're looking for that in two different waves to be able to accomplish that. And so that is a commitment. Again, we don't have membership here. This is like if you're new to the church, this is just, man, if you believe in what we're doing and where we're going, we would love for you to just jump on board and be able to accomplish this. And next Sunday, June 5th, next Sunday is Commitment Sunday. So this is going to be a big day where we all come together and pull off this amazing task, this amazing event. And so it's getting down to go time. So I want to challenge you to have one of those commitment cards in your hand. If you haven't had that conversation with your spouse, with your family, have that conversation. If you haven't gone for a walk and prayed about it and asked God, hey, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to contribute? It's time to have that prayer, that walk, and that conversation because next Sunday is when we need that commitment by. So as you're praying about that, I want you to consider people greater than yourselves. That's what the objective here is. And really, I want you to think about this. This isn't just an opportunity for a few people in our community for the next year, for 2016 or 2017. This has ramifications that go on and on and on. I believe, not to be too full of what God's trying to do here, but I believe that God is going to do huge things through our entire community through this that are going to last not just this year and next year and the years to come, but it'll be on down the road. We'll have lasting ramifications for that. So, as we think about this individually, because I've had to think about this individually and what kind of sacrifice and commitment our family's going to make, I have just kind of scratched up these questions, these things that I'm pondering. Last week we talked about, what you're giving to and what God wants you to give, and this week there was just a thought on my brain that couldn't shake, and it's just a statement that kind of goes like this, that maybe some of us have had. I wish I could help, but I can't. Like, it sounds amazing, and yeah, there's going to be this big space, and we're going to be able to reach people in a larger way, in a more dynamic way, in the bowling lanes. That all sounds really cool, and I wish you guys the best of luck, but I just can't. And maybe you mean that from a perspective of, like, I'm already tied up. Like, I bring in a pretty good amount of money, but I'm already committed. I got a house payment. I got a car payment. We got our summer plans, our vacations already planned out. I mean, I can't. I'm like strapped. If you could give me a couple of years or something, maybe I could kind of figure that out. Or maybe you mean that from the perspective of, I just really can't. Like, if I had any extra money, I'd like put tires on my car, okay? Like, I would do something different. Now, I want to talk about that very personal, because that is something that God is leading us to over and over again as individuals to go, is that really the case? Is that really the case? Because God is looking at something different than we're looking at. So I want to scratch the surface a little bit deeper, and instead of just saying, yeah, sure, I could contribute, I guess, something, or I really can't, kind of flippantly, I'd like to ask us to dig a little deeper. To do that, I want to share with you a passage in Mark chapter 12. I love this passage because what's happening is Jesus is just watching the crowd. Do you ever do that? My wife and I like to do this sometimes, just at a restaurant or something. We hardly talk because we're people watching, right? Which is more fun downriver than any other place I've ever been. But just people watching, just looking at people, seeing what's going on. Jesus is people watching. This is what it says. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd. He's sitting near the temple and he's watching people give their contributions, putting their money into the temple treasury. You know what's interesting about that? The temple treasury was run by the religious leaders, the teachers of the law, the priests, who later were found to be corrupt, and Jesus condemned for being corrupt people. So, like, even the place where this money is going is not even that great a place. It says that many rich people threw in large amounts. So Jesus is just watching this. The offering box is there, and what's interesting is these priests were really good. They were smart. They had a big metal box, and they put a metal box as the offering, and then people would come and bring their money. Now, the metal box is important because they didn't have cash like we do, or checks. They had coins. So what happens when you dump a bag of coins into a metal box? It makes a big splash. Well, you don't want to be the person that comes up and goes tink, tink, right? You want to make a statement. And so every time, especially the rich people would come up, and you would hear this sound, all of a sudden the priests and the teachers of the law, their ears perked up, and they're like, it's like when you ring the bell at Arby's or something, it's like, woo, oopa, or whatever. So anyway, they did this, and it was a big thing, and people would take notice of the large amounts. Jesus watched all this happen. He watched a lot of people come in and dump these big amounts. Never said anything, his heart rate didn't raise at all, nothing happened. But then it says, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Tink, tink. Nobody else noticed. She might have even been looked down on by some people, like, really? That's all you're going to do? And Jesus gathered his disciples to him, and he said, boys, come here. Look at this. Did you see what just happened? And then he said this. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, truly, I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything all she had to live on. Now, there's a couple of things that story that just tear at my heart. And the first one is this, that this is not advice that you would get from any financial guru in the world. Right? Sit down with any person. Okay, I got two small copper coins. What should I do with them? Well, you should hold on to that because it's all you've got to live on, right? That would be the advice. Save it. Don't splurge. Even if you went to Dave Ramsey, who we teach financial peace here, and it's a big thing. Dave Ramsey, a big financial guru, you were to call in and say, Dave, I've got 2 small copper coins. What do you think I should do with it? Well, you should take one of them, you should cut it in half, and you should give that as your offering. You should take the other half, and then you should put that into savings, and then you should take the other coin and actually live on that kind of stuff, right? Even Dave Ramsey, I don't think, not knowing this story, would tell you to do what this lady did. But she goes, and she gives everything, and Jesus goes, man, that's amazing, to what everybody else would call stupid, foolish. Jesus goes, that's what I'm talking about right there. And so I want to do a couple things with this story, and I want this to dig up some stuff, because this digs up stuff in my heart every time I read the story. I want to look at kind of the bigger picture. I want to look at things from God's perspective, because we always look at our money from our perspective. We look at it from everybody else's perspective. But right here in this story, I want us to view the way God is looking at us when we bring to Him an offering. And the first thing we got to know is the widow gives us this example that it is all about priority. That's what God was looking at when Jesus said that, and He looked at this lady and we're like, there's a lady who, despite not having as much as everybody else have, this is a lady that's got her priorities in place. So here's what God sees. God is looking at the heart. God's looking at a heart. For those of you who have kids, you might have had this experience. You ever get a bad gift from your kid? Maybe the question is, have you ever gotten a good gift from your kid? No. Father's Day is like this, and my kids are in here, so I love them, and I need them to know this. When Father's Day comes around, they go and they try to figure out Dad, and so they go to the tool section, or they go somewhere like, Dad likes this kind of stuff, so they grab something, they buy it, and I've actually got tools in my drawer that I have absolutely no idea what they do, right? But and they look nifty and stuff, but I can't use them, never have used them, right? So I get those gifts, and you just kind of look, and you're like, oh, yay, and those gifts, they mean something, but they're not quite that deep. And then you get those gifts, you're like, wow, that's amazing. I was sitting at a Panera about a year ago, and I had this little booklet that I keep my to-do list in and everything, and I opened up to one of the back pages, and my daughter had written something in there. My 7-year-old daughter at the time had written something in there, and it just says, I love you, you're the best daddy, Nevaeh. And right there in the middle of Panera, I was like, I can't even. Right, so I'm trying to deal with that, and that gift right there, that was the heart of that, meant so much more than even some of the literal gifts that I've been giving my kids. A gift, an offering, is all about the heart, and God, unlike the rest of us, sees through everything else, and all He sees is our heart, our motivation when we give a gift. In Genesis chapter 4, the first siblings that ever existed were Cain and Abel. They were the first brothers, and Cain and Abel had 2 different professions, and one of the first things we learned about them is that they came and brought an offering to God. This is what it says. Now Abel kept flocks, because that's what he did, and Cain worked the soil, because that's what he did. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, and Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. So you're reading this and you're like, yeah, whatever. Cain worked the ground, so he brought grain offerings, and Abel worked the livestock, so he brought some animal offerings, and you're just like, yep, they're just both bringing offerings. And then it says, the Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. And then it never explains that. I wish Scripture sometimes would explain that a little bit more, but read that over and over again. It never explains why God looked at Abel's offering with favor and He didn't look at Cain's offering with favor. It doesn't give us really any indication why one was better than the other. The story continues on without explaining it. Basically, God gives Cain a warning. He says, listen, you've got something going on in your heart, and if you don't take care of that, sin is crouching at the door, and it's going to take hold of you. And lo and behold, what happens immediately after that is Cain commits the first murder. And because of his jealousy, he murders his brother Abel. But it doesn't explain the whole offering. It's just they both brought stuff, and God looked at Abel's with favor, and he looked at Cain's wrong. And basically the bottom line of that story is because God was looking at the heart. And Abel apparently brought it sincerely. He brought it as just an offering from his heart to God. It wasn't for show. It wasn't for anybody. But Cain, on the other hand, brought it apparently, maybe begrudgingly. Maybe it was out of obligation. Maybe it's because his brother was being a show-off and he was doing it, so he decided to do it. And for whatever reason, God looked into the heart of the offerings and he said, no, I don't like what I'm seeing there. God is looking at our hearts all of the time, and that's the most important thing to him in the world, not our outward sign. He's not looking for some sort of religious box that we're checking. God's looking after our heart. And we have this opportunity right now, and it's honestly a sincere opportunity to reach people in this world, in our community. And he's saying, here's what I want you to do. I want you to, it doesn't matter about the percentage, it doesn't matter about how much, I want you to come before me honestly, sincerely, and offer me what is right in your heart. God's looking at the sacrifice. The second thing God's looking at, and the lesson we learned from the widow, is God is looking for sacrifice. He's looking for sacrifice. I don't know if you've ever done this, but have you ever done anything that really wasn't a sacrifice? Honestly, with the shoes, I really contemplate that. As I was digging the shoes out of my closet, I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I'm like, look at me, I'm going to go give my shoes. And I pulled out my junk collection of shoes and went, this didn't cost me anything. This wasn't a sacrifice in any way for me. It wasn't a sacrifice, but God's going, listen, if you give, it's only a gift. If it's a sacrifice, it's only an offering to me if it costs you something. And so God is always asking us to make a sacrifice, to give up something that we want in order to follow after him. In 2 Samuel 24, David is the king of Israel, and there is a plague that breaks out. And one of the prophets comes up to David and he says, here, in order to stop this plague, here's what you've got to do. You've got to go offer a genuine sacrifice to God. So here's what you need to do. You need to go to the field of Araunah. And when you get to that guy's place, when you get to his field, right there in that place, you need to offer a sacrifice. Now what's fascinating about this is later God had picked that place already because that place became where God ordered the temple to be built. But David makes this sacrifice at the field of Araunah. He must have been like, why am I going to Araunah's field? But whatever. So he shows up, and Araunah's like, oh my goodness, it's the king. Why are you here? And David says, because I came to make a sacrifice. And Araunah thinks, much like maybe you and I would, he would be like, oh, well, not only can you have my field, but also I will give you everything you need for the sacrifice. Here's what Araunah says. Araunah said to David, let my lord the king take whatever he wishes and offer it up. Here are oxen for the burnt offering, and here are threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood. Your majesty, Araunah, gives all this to the king. Put it on my tab. Araunah also said to him, may the Lord your God accept you. So Araunah's heart's in the right place. He's like, man, I want to do whatever I can. I want God to accept you, and anything you feel called to do, I am behind you as my king. But the king showed his heart. But the king replied to Araunah, no, I insist on paying for it. I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. And so it says, so David bought the threshing floor and the oxen and paid 50 shekels of silver for them. And he gave us a simple explanation of what an offering really is. It's like, no, I have to sacrifice. This has to come from me. I can't just take your sacrifice and offer it. That's not going to work. It has to be genuine. It has to be real. It has to be a sacrifice that comes from me. So God is looking at that, and really in any opportunity to give or to be a part of his kingdom, he's saying, I want it to hurt a little bit. Because if it doesn't hurt a little bit, then it isn't really a sacrifice, and it isn't really an offering to God. So So here's where we're at. We're at this place where we have this big opportunity. Again, this is kind of the final countdown. We thought about playing that on the way out. It's the final countdown this week in order for us to take hold of this opportunity that is right before us. And what it's going to take is us individually coming before God, not just in a surface level way, but really coming before God, looking at these commitment cards really seriously and saying, what can I do? Can I honestly offer to my God what I have, sincerely with my heart, and can I make that sacrifice to Him? I want to just share with you, I'm not always a person that's come from being a generous giver, for sure. Even as I was a pastor, I would be in the church for years, and I wasn't always in that generous spot with my life. In fact, I was kind of the opposite. When things got tight, that giving, that was the first thing to go. And I used to be one of the people that would hear about great things, and I'd be like, oh man, that's great. That sounds really cool. Wish I could help, but I just can't. I just can't do it. And I was in a place like that for a long time, and money was always really tight, and it was always stressful. And then I moved ministry, and we moved from Oklahoma, and I actually moved to a ministry in Missouri, and all of a sudden I found myself around these incredibly generous people. One of the pastors I worked with was just a very generous. He was a giver. He would always give first, and he didn't always have the money to give, but he would give. And I met these other people, and all of a sudden their generosity became kind of contagious to me. And sometimes I was a little bewildered by them. I'd look at them and be like, really, you're gonna make that call right in the middle? I mean, I'm the pastor, and I'm looking at people going, man, that's fascinating that you have that kind of generous spirit. One example of that was I saw real generosity. Bethany and I had watched this couple in the church, and they worked with an adoption agency overseas, and they had adopted 2 little girls from India. And we looked at that and we're like, man, that's just amazing that they could go to a country that doesn't really have Christ in it, that they could adopt, they could bring them into their home, and they could not only just feed and clothe them, but they could teach them about Jesus. We said, man, we want to do that. And so we're like, yeah, we want to do that. How much does that cost? And they told us the price tag, and we're like, wow, I guess we're not going to do that. But we still felt compelled by it. We were like, man, that seems amazing, incredible. We would love to do that. And so we just prayed. We're like, God, if you want us to do this, I just pray that you would show us how this is going to work. And one of the people in the church came to us one day and said, hey, my wife and I are too old to adopt, but we would love to, and we've got a heart for it. And we kind of caught wind that you guys are interested in it and you're praying about it, and if you want to adopt, we'll give you $10,000. And we went, wow, like if you're looking for a sign, like that's the sign, right? And so we not only did we take that, but we also took that and we started taking steps, and it cost more than that, but we sacrificed everything we had. And now because of that person's generosity, I have a son that I wouldn't have had before because of somebody else's generosity. And that generosity for us became contagious. And we went, man, we want to live that way. We want to live that kind of open-handed life to where we can just give and be generous. And so coming from nothing, we began to create that margin. We began like that widow, we began to create that place where we go, no, this is the first priority. And when opportunities would come up, we wouldn't say, oh, I wish we could, but we can't. We would say, absolutely, we want to be a part of that because we want to see the kind of thing that we've seen in our life because of what somebody has shared with us. As we get ready to make this commitment together, I want you to live in that and not walk away going, man, it sounds cool, but I can't. But that you would say, God, what do you want me to do? Sincerely, I come with everything. You and what you're doing in this community is first priority to me, and I will make it a first priority in my life. Let me pray for all of us as we get ready to accept this challenge.